Hello, I'm Harris Shilakovsky. I'm a professional violinist by training. About a year ago, while teaching strings in a public school system, I was inspired by listening to podcasts of my favorite scientific friends at the Planetary Society. And I came up with an idea. I would write musical pieces that would represent the different chemical elements, since I'd been learning about how stellar objects were created. So I figured I could write music that captured the character of each chemical element. Then I would continue composing music that would take these musical elements and musically fuse them together in a way that represented the way that galaxies were created early in the history of the cosmos. So I told one of my fifth grade violin students about this idea, and she was really excited to hear the elements brought to life, since she was just then learning about the elements in her class in science. As I began creating some early musical sketches, I decided I really wanted to expand the whole concept and write a piece that would tell the story of the history of our cosmos, beginning as far back as scientists have established theories, and maybe even beyond that. This is a huge, magnanimous project that I expect will take multiple years to complete, since the universe as we know it was created almost 14 billion years ago. So let me just tell you a little bit about my philosophy. I believe in truth and in positive human traits such as justice, kindness, freedom, and equality. You may be able to discern the struggles that scientists have fought in my musical representations. There is frequently a bittersweet taste associated with great scientific discoveries. There have always been conflicts between science and power, political power. Scientific discoveries have been put to the service of the creation of great wealth over and over throughout the centuries and right up to our present lives, to our present time. You may also hear in my music the music of success, of the joy of discovery. As we listen to the music representing these historically interesting subjects, I'll tell you a bit about the people, about their lives and their struggles and their successes and failures. And you can let me know if you believe I've captured some of these events in my music. If you become a member, I'll respond personally to your comments. And we can have a discussion about it. So many of these pieces are excerpts from the complete work. They're probably, in fact, will end up being several complete opi, by the time I'm finished, in order to represent so many different parts of our cosmic history. So to give you an idea of what the music sounds like, you'll hear these excerpts in these small versions of the podcast that you'll be listening to, or watching here on the video, for instance. But you'll be able to hear those little bits and more of the complete recordings as they become available and as they become finished and edited and re-edited and completed and polished. And more interesting conversations that will go into more depth about some of these subjects. If you become a member or a subscriber to my whole website, the whole, you know the drill if you've listened to different podcasts. So in each audio podcast episode, just to go into a little detail of what to expect, I'll be having a section every time on a current events focus. We'll talk about a particular subject that's recently come up, not necessarily that day, because I'm not doing what other scientific podcasters are doing and reporting on every single thing that's happening, every rocket ship that's going up in the air. I'm mostly focused on telling that history of the history of our cosmos and the history of how great discoveries were made and great and important inventions were created. So in the music, you'll hear individual elements that are derived from my reimagining of the character and qualities of the different people who made these discoveries, and of the actual discoveries themselves. And we'll talk about a little bit about some of the compositional techniques that I use to create these musical pieces. And then we'll be piecing together the elements into a broad musical canvas, if you will, discussing a little bit also about how I choose different key, what key the music is in, whether it's a different mode, a major or minor, if it's happy or sad music, all those basic ideas of how music is created, how fast the music goes or how slow, in other words, the choice of tempo, what kinds of bridging materials I might use, musically speaking, how the elements are merged together, what technique I use to put the different parts together. And we'll talk about some little production tidbits too. I might be discussing a little bit about what instruments I used, whether they're musical live instruments, live musicians playing, or whether they're virtual instruments, and how the music is written, either in longhand, on with a pencil, or if it's being composed on my keyboard directly into my computer using a program like Finale, which of course is a musical engraving software. And then after we talk about the current events focus, then we'll also go in each episode into a little historical subject. So each thing that we're seeing that happens today can only happen because of the things that happened before. In some cases, just yesterday. In some cases, hundreds or even thousands of years ago, there were people who developed ways of looking at the stars, or techniques or devices that they created. Think of early versions of the telescope, for instance. So as we look at some of those different discoveries or scientific inventions or whatever, we'll be talking about also, or listening to, examples of music that I've either created or actually sometimes pulled from the public domain, from music that existed, that's available to us to use, and that I might rewrite or rearrange and reperform and reproduce for you to listen to, that represents the period or even the specific year in which that invention was made, in which that discovery was made. So, and then we might also represent in each historical. So we're going to look at a piece of history that made today's discovery possible. We'll look at the person that made, or people that made, those discoveries possible, and whatever associations they may have belonged to, or that existed that they had to deal with societies, organizations, and perhaps other individuals that they may have borrowed some of their ideas from. And then we might also be talking about and listening to music that represents the conflicts that these people had to deal with, and or perhaps the things that made it easier for them to work. And then we will throw a little bit into how their contributions of discoveries and such fit into their society, or into the existing belief systems or religious systems that existed that they had to deal with. And then we'll build the piece of music, adding this period music, plus the music that represents the conflicts or lack of conflict, into that discovery music to create the actual nature of the composition. So hopefully when you listen to it, it'll inspire a vision, so you'll see what life was like for that particular scientist or stargazer or creative thinker or whatever. And then, of course, at the end of each episode, we'll have a little wrap-up, a little commercial. We'll talk about what's available to you as if you become a sponsor or somebody who helps out a little bit, what you'll be able to hear, because different things will be presented each from time to time that are new offers and benefits that'll become available. But there'll be things that are available to you, whether or not you are a casual listener, a fan, a scientist yourself, or a teacher, because these things were envisioned initially as things that relate to what people are learning about, like we said, in school. So students may want to listen to it. Teachers may even use it, little episodes, in some of your classrooms. Perfectly fine, as long as you have either subscribed or whatever. For the full episodes, the podcasts, you will have to have a subscription, because some of them are available to the general public, but not all. Some of them will be available with a subscription. And then we'll also, of course, at the wrap-up at the end of each episode, tell you what to expect in the next episode, because I will be moving sometimes chronologically through history to the next period of time, but we'll also sometimes jump around a little bit from period to period. I will also always make an open invitation to you, whoever you are, to astrologists, to early cosmologists, to physicists, to composers, other musicians, to music critics, to science historians, telescope specialists, to all join me in the podcast universe on a future episode. And of course, you'll, if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see a much shorter version of this whole discussion, and you'll get more complete music in the full audio podcast. So the audio podcast would be great if you're taking a long trip, you need something to listen to, and listen to the whole podcast. You get comfortable, and like I said, you'll be able to hear early releases of new stuff, special exclusive materials, special benefits. There'll also be a bloopers section, because sometimes the mouth doesn't work exactly the way I want it to, or perhaps that's something to do with my brain. And more benefits, like I said, will be announced from time to time. So, onward to this week's episode.